Gentlemen, the off season is nearly over. Preview season starts today with the ACC.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Three Technique College Football Podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. I'm Mitch Mason, joined by Trey Reeves, Garrett Turney. Fellas, debuting a little bit of a different format today. If you're watching us on the video side, you're going to see a lot of new content. And guys, that is a testament to how hard that both of you guys have worked on this. Garrett, you're producing the video side. Trey, you did all the graphics for this. Preview season's here, fellas, and I could not be more excited.
Mitch, I've got a big cup of water right here. I've got a lot of research on my second tab over here, and I am ready to go. I think how many days do we have until football season overall? Do we have a countdown on that?
Because not that many at all.
7 Saturdays without college football, I think, is the countdown of number of Saturdays. You guys can do the math at home. Not a math major over here, but we are ready to go. We're starting things off with the ACC, a conference that is just fascinating and wacky, has a lot of fun teams in it this year. So I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I mean, as we're fast approaching the season, we're also going to be ratcheting up the content over here. So I know that we're really pumped to be getting things going on the pod. And I'm really excited to get into it this year. Maybe, try a little bit of a different flavor to previews this year, a little bit more to look at, a little bit less, third string offensive tackles from Boston College and stuff like that. We will not be talking about him today. I don't know what his name is. We didn't do that research.
Well, we did plenty of research, but I think we condensed a lot of it for optimal intake, for the optimal viewer experience. We're really excited for this, guys. We've been talking about preview season for quite some time. And of course, all of this coincides with one of the biggest announcements that we had on this podcast, that we helped write a preview magazine. All previews this season for the 2023 season on the Three Technique are brought to you by the Transfer Portal CFB Preview Magazine in collaboration with our friends Dylan, Dan, Liam, the boys. We just released that 2023 preview magazine. It is over 350 pages of in-depth interviews, previews, recruiting, analysis. One of the best products that you will find on the market today, and it is just a third of the price. It's just $9.99. You can head on over to the Transfer Portal CFB website or their social media. You can download it right from the link, either in the description or on the website, and get the digital PDF. We've had the feedback rolling in, and it's been overwhelmingly positive, which is just really humbling, certainly for me. I know for you guys as well. We put a lot of work into that, and to see, several hundred downloads basically off the launch was really, really cool. And we're really excited. We're marching well towards 1,000 downloads of it. And if you haven't already picked up your copy, we'd love for you to be a part of that. Really one of the best things that I've ever done in my writing career. And I think you guys would say the same as well. And Trey's muted.
There we go. We're rolling with it here. It was a blast to put together, and it was absolutely, just so much fun to collab with those guys, to get to know all of these teams so well. Lots of fun research went into it, and it was a labor of love for you guys. Can't say enough good things about this magazine.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Just awesome to get to go and, do all that work, put in all that effort into the research. And that's kind of the same level of research you put into these previews we're going to be doing for you here. Again, borrowing a lot of the information from it. So if you want full breakdowns from what we're talking about tonight, you got to go check out that magazine. It's really good. It's top notch, and you guys are going to love it.
We're really excited for it, but what we are even just as excited about is getting into these previews. We will have one preview every weekend, essentially. Your Monday morning episode will be an entire conference preview, unlike last year when we split it up, where it was half of a conference each episode. This time, Monday mornings will be conference previews. And right now, I'm lining up a bunch of interviews for the Thursday morning episode. So, for instance, we'll have a special guest coming up on Thursday's episode. Stay tuned for that. Follow us over on our social media at 3TechPod on Instagram, Twitter, and now Threads. Insert eye roll here. You'll be able to see that special announcement coming very, very shortly. But, fellas, let's get into it. We will be doing these in the order that they finished in conference play last season. So the 2022 results, we figure that will keep the most relevant teams at the beginning of the discussion, while also giving complete coverage to the rest of the conference, unlike we did it alphabetically last year.
We are not starting with Boston College.
We are not college. The focus group said that they would prefer not to start with Screaming Eagles football, and I have to agree with them. I will say, last year we waited until the very end of the episode to unveil our conference standings, and this year we're turning that on its head. I think that will actually facilitate the discussion the most effectively. So, Trey, as we went through our I should say the regular season predictors, and we'll get to our playoff projections later in preview season, what stood out to you about the ACC, and ultimately how many teams do you think are fighting for the top of the conference?
Well, one thing that stood out to me is my first run through the predictor machine. I created quite the conundrum for the conference offices when I had 4 teams that played that finished with one conference loss with a combined 1 game between them. I went back and kind of edited some stuff around, made it more realistic, I think. But with scrapping divisions, and it's not just an ACC thing, right? We've seen the Pac-12, they jumped to this last year. SEC and ACC are moving towards this next year, and the Big 12 is with 14 teams going to be doing the same modeling that they've been doing for their conference standings with 10 teams. It creates a lot of fascinating scenarios, especially when it's not a true round robin with everyone playing each other. So lots of quirky tiebreakers, lots of opportunities for teams, that catch certain other teams on a down year, catch a lot of maybe easier scheduling models or easier scheduling years than maybe they had in the past. We don't have the ACC Coastal anymore. And as fun as that was, to get a different champion every year for 7 years or how many years that was, it's gone out the window. So the model is hopefully going to be a little bit more balanced. There are a few teams that I think are going to take advantage of different schedules this year. I'll talk about one in particular that I think is going to get off to a really hot start. And it's going to be fascinating to see how this conference race develops here in the ACC.
Yeah, you said it, man. It's cool to see. I think you're going to finally get the best 2 teams. It seems like it's been pretty lopsided recently. And I'm really excited to get the best 2 teams at the top of this conference, really open it up so it doesn't feel like the whole thing's done in September.
Trey, I'm really glad you're on board with my Georgia Tech takes. We'll get into that later on in the show.
I got to put your money where your mouth is on Georgia Tech. That's all I'm going to say.
Trey and I differ on where we have the Yellow Jackets finishing, all in due time. Guys, to tee this off, though, our top 4 teams are a consensus group. They're not all in the same order, but the same 4 teams, Clemson, Florida State, Duke, North Carolina, round out our top 4. When it comes to teams battling for those 2 coveted spots in Charlotte, your early projections, and Garrett, let's start with you. Who do you expect those 2 teams to be in Charlotte for the ACC championship?
Well, again, you've come to me for the hot takes, so this is what you're going to get. My top 2 teams this year are going to be Florida State and Duke. I know there's going to be a lot of angry Clemson fans at me with this. I think Clemson's going to have a fantastic season. I'm not nearly as down on them as a lot of people are. I'm just really high on both Florida State and Duke. I've been seeing the returns on the Knowles coin kind of from afar here, and I'm really excited to hop in with the Knowles coin. So I think those are going to be my top 2 teams this year in conference, and we'll talk about that a little bit later why, but those are my top 2 teams for sure.
Yeah, I definitely have Duke in tier 1. Those 4 teams that all of us have, Clemson, Florida State, Duke, UNC, that's the top tier, and that's the order I have. So Clemson and Florida State facing off rematching a very exciting early season. I think week 4 is when they face off in the regular season this year. I think we get a rematch of that towards the end of the year at the ACC championship.
Yeah, Trey and I are simpatico there. Clemson, Florida State, Duke, North Carolina. So I've got the Tigers and the Noles making it to Charlotte as well. But you may be wondering, well, that's great, guys. You've given us the answers to the test. What does the test look like? And my friends, that is why we have written a long old preview document. Again, we're going to be shifting up the order this year a little bit, making it a little bit more conversational. So as you have thoughts, as you have comments, send them to us at 3Tech Pod on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast side, if you want to reach out to us on social media at 3Tech Pod, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter as well. Guys, let's start with Clemson. And one of the things that we did this year was we assigned a movie where appropriate to kind of describe the outlook of the team. So for Clemson's preview this year, I said the Dabo Night rises this year, guys. Last year, it was an 11-3 campaign. They went 8-0 in conference play. And from afar, you look and go, yeah, that's a really good season. But if you listen to our episode with Luke Winstell the other day, he mentioned that Clemson fans are still a little restless, right? They want to climb all the way back to the top of the hill. They want to be competing for national championships. And you see on screen, if you're watching on YouTube, the loss to Notre Dame was a bad one. The loss to South Carolina was upsetting, to say the least. And then they get blown out against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. Now, the main issue was that the offense was not at all reliable. 48th in total offense, 66th in passing offense a season ago, which is just not going to get it done, especially when you're in some shootouts, when you're not keeping up with Notre Dame. And guys, I don't think anybody accused Notre Dame of being an offensive juggernaut last year. When you're not able to keep track with them, that's a sign that your offense has some issues. And DJ Uiagalelei has now obviously departed. Cade Klubnik is the new starter. And I think a lot of Tiger fans are excited specifically by the fact that Garrett Riley has come over as the offensive coordinator from TCU. Led the Horned Frogs to a historic offensive output for their school last season. He's now in Death Valley with Clemson. Guys, the players that you have to pay attention to, we'll start on the offensive side. Obviously, Cade Klubnik is a guy that's got to move the needle for Clemson. 61 of 100 passing last year, 697 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You look at those stats and nothing wows you, but I think it's the potential that's really exciting for Clemson fans. You talk about an air raid style offense, a guy in Garrett Riley who's going to get that ball out of the hand of his quarterback really, really quickly. I don't need to tell you guys about Will Shipley, 210 carries for almost 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns last season. He was the straw that stirred the drink for the Tigers offense. Out wide, if you're wondering, well, that's great. Klubnik's got a big arm, but who on earth is he throwing to? It's a great question because over the last couple of seasons, Clemson has had some question marks around the playmakers there. Antonio Williams is probably the guy that they need to step up. He had a productive 2022, but now he's got to be the guy, right? They don't have a T. Higgins that's walking back through that door. Antonio Williams has got to step up and be the man. I will say the offensive line should be really solid. 4 of the 5 starters are back this season. Jordan McFadden was drafted by the Chargers, but freshman All-American Blake Miller is going to slide out to the tackle spots. So the offense looks really, really strong. Guys, in your mind, if Clemson has a competent offense, is that the only thing that's holding them back from continuing to dominate the ACC?
I think the offense is the easy thing to find, right? The low-hanging fruit, if you will, of saying, hey, if Clemson can fix that, then everything's golden. The other thing that and we'll get into defense here in just a second, but the pass defense started to slip a little bit last year too, quietly, because, the run defense, the pass rush specifically, that's going to be elite at Clemson. That's where Clemson always recruits the best. They always have elite defensive linemen. They do typically have, talented defensive backs, but the coordinator turnover that Dabo Swinney's experienced the last few years, I think might be starting to catch up with him on the defensive side of the ball as well. When you lose Brent Venables, right, it's just a huge, huge loss, a gaping hole in that side. And there's a lot to prove on that side of the ball and the coaching staff still. But if you can fix the offense, you're going to roll through the ACC because there's not a lot of defenses that scare you. There's a lot of talented defense. There's a lot of talented defensive coordinators and coaches. But from an overall skill set standpoint, when you just line up the Jimmies and Joes on the field, as long as you have competent quarterback play and it's not actively hurting you like it has the last couple of years, no offense to DJU, but that I think is very easy to say that it's actively hurting Clemson, how he was playing the quarterback position the last couple of years. As long as you don't have that, you're going to be okay. Now, when you get to the playoff, it might be different, but just getting through the ACC, that shouldn't be a problem. So what I'm really excited to see, I think Garrett Riley was the best coordinator hire nationally. For my money, I think that was the best hire. I showed that Dabo Swinney was willing to step outside of his coaching tree, willing to step outside of his element a little bit. And we'll see if he can take Cade Klubnik and do what he did with Max Duggan last year and just put him in a system and say, hey, go play ball, go make 1 or 2 reads, make the right throw, and just get it to the hands of playmakers. You're going to see Clemson get right back to the college football playoff. But if there's any, hiccups, they have to start week 1 with Duke, right? They're going to have a really solid defensive test. They play Notre Dame. We'll get into schedule here in a second, but they do have some defenses that are going to test that system and test Cade Klubnik relatively early in their schedule. So, yeah, if they can get that fixed, I think if anybody can do it, it's going to be Garrett Riley. But it's going to be fascinating to see how he molds Cade Klubnik, how he fits into this offensive scheme that was so electric at TCU last year.
Yeah, for me, it's not a question of can it happen. It's more of a question of how fast does it happen. If we're looking over at the schedule one more time, we've got Duke in week 1, Florida State week 4. I have no doubt that they can figure it out and that they can actually get things in a good place in terms of what Cade Klubnik can do. But he didn't exactly pick up his first college scheme very quickly. And that's not any knock on him. He's a very talented player, plenty of talent going on there. But I think, his big consideration here is he didn't necessarily pick it up fast. And now he's learning a second college scheme in as many years. And he's going to have a new style of coaching. He's going to have a lot of new stuff going on. To have to start with Duke, where, the head coach, Mike Elko, used to be a defensive coordinator and an experienced quarterback, Riley Leonard, he's got to go up against who, in week 1, I'll take the experience and what I know a lot of times more than just optimism and upside. And then they have a couple of tune-ups. They got Charleston Southern, they got Florida Atlantic, but it's Florida State after that. And that's a team that's kind of a dark horse for a lot of people. A lot of people think that they could be making a playoff or they could be the big top dog. I certainly have them there. I personally have them going undefeated this season. That's going to be a tough game for them to figure out in their first, 2 of their first 4 being probably 4, massive stakes in the conference.
They're 2 toughest conference games probably when you take into account home road splits as well.
And this isn't a knock on Clemson specifically. This is a knock on anybody you are when your 2 top teams going against you are, the 2 top teams in your conference. They're both in, the first 4 weeks, and you're breaking in, what is essentially a new system with an inexperienced quarterback. The run game's great. Will Shipley's going to be fantastic. But how fast does it catch on? I don't know. Like, it could catch on week 1 against Duke and, they come out of the locker room with a little adjustment and all of a sudden it's off to the races, or it could falter. And then, you're looking at going into Syracuse 2-2 and, the conference race is pretty much done and dusted for you.
It's a great point. And we'll get into Duke in a minute. Gary, you talk about trying to figure out a passing game. Duke is one of the most blitz heavy teams in the country, right? Mike Elko, now Tyler Santucci, the former linebacker coach at Texas A&M, comes over as the defensive coordinator, That will be a trial by fire for Cade Klubnik. Not that he hasn't experienced that already in his 4 starts. Tennessee got after him too, but I am a little bit concerned about how quickly Clemson can pick that up. I do think they find a way to beat Duke. I don't think Duke is that good, but we'll see. Weird things happen in the season opener. Clemson's defense, Trey, you mentioned their pass defense started to slip a little bit last year. The corners for me aren't going to stand out for Clemson. I look at their safeties like Jalen Phillips. They always have a stud safety. So it's kind of that, who can play that Isaiah Simmons role, who's just an X factor back there. But the corners haven't exactly been incredibly elite. I know AJ Terrell came out just a couple of years ago, but that may be a question mark for Clemson this year. The front seven, though, is really, really strong. They recruit at an elite level, maybe the best in the country on that defensive line. Tyler Davis was a first team All ACC player last year. They've got two true freshmen in Peter Woods and TJ Parker, who after the spring game are already cementing themselves in the rotation, kind of like what Texas A&M did last year with a bunch of 5 stars. It looks like they're going to roll 6, 7, 8 guys deep on that front four. And then you throw in a linebacker like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who's my pick to be the best linebacker in the country. He's got the NFL pedigree. The guy is an absolute monster. He's already mocked in the first round of the 2024 NFL draft. So a lot of talent on that Clemson defense. I think they're going to have to get it done in the front seven as opposed to relying on just kind of no fly zone in the secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. The recipe for success for Clemson on defense is going to be get to the quarterback, make the sack, and just be relentless pressuring the quarterback. And like you said, rolling through and staying fresh by utilizing that depth they have, not just on the defensive line, but at linebacker as well. They've got a lot of talented players that are really interesting at linebacker as well. So that's going to be that's going to be the recipe for Clemson, as it has been throughout their strong years. They have had good safety play in the past, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're not typically known for having a lockdown, shutdown corner or even
They've had a couple.
They've had a couple,
yeah,
but it's not consistently been the strength of the defense throughout their Renaissance years here. So yeah, the recipe is absolutely going to be get to the quarterback and just relentlessly pressure. And it's going to be, Venables is really, really good at scheming together that pass rush as well. And coming from multiple different angles, blitzing from different positions. It's going to be a really interesting test for Wes Goodwin to see how can he respond? How can he pick up where Venables left off and not make that too much of a drop off with this talent that he has to work with?
Yeah. Goodwin, former linebacker coach who was promoted when Venables left, certainly has his work cut out for him. Their over-under, guys, is 10.5. I think we all have Clemson at least around that. Garrett, you're going under. Trey and I are both going over that mark. And
I'm going under, actually. I have them at 10-2.
Oh, my bad. Yes. Okay,
I have them picking up an out-of-conference Notre Dame loss.
That's right. That'll be a crucial game, which we get to the schedule breakdown. We talked about that Monday Labor Day game against Duke. I just got word that I might be at a lake house for that game, which will be a ton of fun. But for me, the crucial stretch is the back half of the season, right? I know a lot of eyes are going to be on Duke, Florida State, and those are big time games. But then you talk about getting the bye week. You go at Miami, at NC State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, at South Carolina. That schedule is not for the faint of heart. And you could see Clemson fall apart if the offense isn't up to snuff. For me, that Notre Dame game on November 4th is going to be a national game. Probably, one that College Game Day finds their way to. That could have some big time playoff implications. And then the Carolinas to finish it out. Listen, we'll talk about North Carolina in just a second, actually next. But that's a tough into the regular season. No matter what you think about UNC's defense and Gene Chizik, that offense is going to put up a lot of points. And I think that it could make for some fireworks coming down the home stretch. So, again, 11-1, I've got them hitting the over. I just think that they're a more complete team than anyone in the conference. They will be my ACC champion pick over Florida State. I really do believe that the Tigers, who have not fallen lower than a 10-win season in the last several years, it's hard to project them to go 12-0. But for me, the ceiling is 12-0. I think realistically, I'll go 11-1.
Yeah, I have them slightly under the over-under. I've got them at 10-2. And look, that's a great season for 99% of the college football universe, right? That is a fantastic season, but Clemson has set that standard so high over the last decade plus under Dabo Swinney that 10-2 feels like a disappointment. Even if they get that championship win, even if they win the bowl game and win 12 games, not being in the college football playoff feels like a letdown. Even if there's a lot to build on for the future under Cade Klubnik. But for this year, I think there's too many trap games with a young quarterback. I think 10-2 is a good, safe bet for me. And they absolutely have the ceiling. They could definitely blow past that.
Yeah, I've got them at 10-2 as well. I think really just the factor that I keep coming back to is it's going to click for them, but I don't think it's going to click in time. I think you have to look at Duke and Florida State. I think both of those games are losses. It's going to be tough to open up against Duke. And we'll talk more about what Duke has to offer in a minute, but I do think that this thing will click. They get, the Syracuse, Wake Forest, and then the bye week to kind of figure stuff out after, towards the end of September. But I think they'll be able to pull out, 10 wins. I think they will barely miss the championship game, kind of like I said. I'm not down on Clemson. I just think it's kind of a next year thing for them. I think next year, a little bit more experience with the quarterback, a little bit more coming back there, year 2 in the Garrett Riley system. I think they'll be back to it. I just think it'll be a little bit of a rough patch in the meantime.
Guys, let's move over to North Carolina. I've termed them Mac Brown and the half team prince. UNC was one of the most outlandish half teams last year where their offense is putting up 60 plus in games, while their defense is also allowing 60 plus. Of course, I'm talking about that shootout against App State, the 63-61 victory in week 2. They scored 56 against Florida A&M. Congrats, but you gave up 24. It was a very close game against Georgia State. And then you look at the losses on that schedule. Notre Dame comes in week 4, and then a 4-game losing streak kicked off by Georgia Tech, of all teams. The Fighting Brent Prize got them, and UNC was just never quite the same. Mac Brown is at a really interesting crossroads this season, right? He's in search of win number 100 in his second stint with the Tar Heels. Chip Lindsey is now the first-year offensive coordinator. Phil Longo goes to Wisconsin. We're really excited about that. Lindsey was the architect behind the explosive UCF offense last season. And then Gene Chizik, right? A national championship winning head coach in his own right, but the defense ranked 116th last year in total defense. They were giving up nearly 440 yards per game, 30 points per game to opposing offenses. And guys, that's not a recipe for winning football. I know they have an explosive offense, but when it doesn't show up, when you're losing 39-10 against Clemson, you need a defense that can step up and get a stop. And they just weren't able to get that last year. I will say, for Tar Heel fans, I don't know that the defense is going to be that much better, but it certainly can't get worse, I wouldn't think. You look at linebackers, Power Eccles, Cedric Gray. I think they're going to be good captains in the middle of that field. And then I like a couple of their cornerbacks, although when I was looking at team strengths and team weaknesses, I think the weakness of this Tar Heels defense is going to be the secondary again. Now, Elijah Huzzy and Armani Chapman. Huzzy's from East Tennessee State, had 6 picks last year. Armani Chapman is from Virginia Tech, played and started 49 games for the Hokies. If they're going to take a step forward, they're going to have to be big pieces to that, because the secondary was just so bad last year. They couldn't stop anybody. They had a wave of transfers out. They don't have a single starter back for 2023. The offense is a whole lot of fun under Drake May, who could be the first overall pick in this next year's NFL draft. But I don't know that being a half team is the way to contend for an ACC title. We all have them in the mix, but I think ultimately that's going to be what holds them back.
Yeah, I think if you're North Carolina, you have to hope that this really is addition by subtraction on the defense. With as many guys that left you, I think you have to hope that, maybe somehow that was just a bad mix. You just didn't have the right guys on the field. And hopefully maybe, this year, new faces across the board can make a few more plays. It's really hard to not play defense and win consistently. I'm tempted to be inclined to say that they fall a little bit in terms of what their expectations are, just because I don't see how you can sustain that level of defense that consistently, right? I mean, they did not play very good defense. If you look back at the graphic, I mean, the defensive numbers are pretty low. The 116th, 86th, 116th, 96th,
A lot of triple
102,
digits there.
128. Yeah, not a lot of great numbers to hang your hat on if you're one of the Tar Heels. So, and again, maybe it was just the players. Maybe they just don't know how to play in the system. Maybe they just weren't good fits. That's what you got to hope for if you're a North Carolina fan, because otherwise things could be a little interesting this year as they have to, maybe they don't meet that level on defense. Maybe they get into some more shootouts, and you got to hope that Drake May can keep up the success now that some of these opposing defenses have film on him.
And, I have North Carolina contending for a conference title. I think we all solidly have them in that top tier. I have them going 10-2 on my first little run through the projections here, but you just know they're going to drop a game that they're not supposed to, right? That defense, you can look at several teams throughout the ACC. I think Wake Forest is another one that, their offense is going to put up a bunch of points. It's going to be explosive, but they're going to drop a game that they shouldn't, that they're the more talented team, that they have the quarterback advantage. That Georgia Tech game last year is a prime example, right? They have no business dropping that game. I know they had already locked up. I think they had already locked up a conference title game appearance at that point, but they were 9-1. And we were talking about them on our show saying, hey, don't forget about the Tar Heels for the college football playoff. And then they go drop a game to Georgia Tech and make us look like fools. So, I mean, when you are a half team, you are going to drop games that you shouldn't drop. That on paper, you should beat them. App State was almost that last year. Georgia Tech was one last year. They've got a tricky non-conference game against Minnesota this year. But, I mean, you got to hope that those transfers that you brought in, I love that Mac Brown's trying. I love that he is, throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks and turning over that secondary room that absolutely needed some new blood in it. But, where's the proof in this Mac Brown tenure that they are going to run through a schedule? I'm mostly talking to myself here because I have them at 10-2. Where's the proof that they run through the schedule and the games, even that they're just supposed to win? I don't think that they've proven that as a program yet.
Yeah. Garrett, if you'll pull their schedule back up, I've got UNC going 9-3, finishing 4th in the conference. I have them losing to South Carolina. They play them in the opener in Charlotte. I think I'm strangely talking myself into South Carolina being a pretty plucky team this year. I think they lost a lot of production. And if I'm wrong on that, it's going to be because the defense can't get any pass rush and they can't move the football unless Spencer Rattler is just having a great game. But you could say the very same thing about North Carolina. You saw their defensive stats, 128th in the country in sacks, 1.28 sacks per game. That is almost dead last in the FBS. Gene Chizik has to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback. He's admitted that. I don't think you could say anything other than, hey, my bad. But until they do that, they're going to remain an incredible half team. Drake May, he's got a bunch of fun weapons to work with this year. They've got a fun running back trio. British Brooks is healthy this season. Elijah Green, Amarian Hampton, who was a standout true freshman last year. And then probably the most fun piece, you have a Kent State transfer and Devontae Walker coming in. He's supposed to be the Josh Downs replacement, right? Which that's not going to be an easy guy to replace. Josh Downs is kind of your offense last year, especially when British Brooks wasn't able to play during the regular season. They do have 4 starters back on the offensive line. Awesome Richards is gone to the draft as a Dallas Cowboy, but they have 4 other starters, and then Willie Lampkins transfers in from Coastal. So the offensive line should be pretty good. Drake May, we know what he is. He's a Heisman-level quarterback, a top 5 draft pick. I'm really, really excited to watch what he can do. But that being said, you've got a tricky start to the beginning of the season. South Carolina, you mentioned Trey, Minnesota comes in, and then early bye. Those early buys can be death, especially for a half team, right? When the defense doesn't have a chance to lick its wounds. You're talking about having to go on the road to Georgia Tech, play a Campbell team that is not a lay-down FCS opponent. They're one of the best teams in the FCS, certainly on the offensive side. So, hey, a team with defensive struggles, you might give up a lot of points to the Fighting Camels. And then you've got Duke, Clemson, and NC State, teams that we think are going to be relatively dangerous on the offensive side. So I don't know, guys. I mean, as we wrap up the UNC preview, I think this is a crossroads for Mac Brown. I wrote about that in our 5 storylines for the ACC article on the Transfer Portal CFB website. I don't know what Mac Brown does if this season goes sideways on him. Maybe he retires. Maybe he sticks around. He's recruiting really well, but I think the Tar Heels have to find a way to be in contention for the ACC crown. Otherwise, I honestly don't know where he goes from here.
Yeah, it's going to be, a tricky start, very tricky close. That middle definitely has an opportunity to make some hay there. Not a lot of defenses you're scared of if you're Drake May in the offense, but yeah, very tricky start, very tricky close for North Carolina.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if the middle will kind of lull them to sleep in terms of how highly they have to execute on the offensive side of the football, right? I'm curious to see if maybe, when they hit Duke and Clemson at the end of the year, if they haven't been used to playing a defense like that, if they haven't been used to having to come with their A game and, convert some of those tough third downs and things like that. Really curious to see how they bounce back on that. Like Mitch, I also have them go 9-3. I think they lose to South Carolina to open, and I will also pick them to lose to Duke and Clemson at the end of the year as well.
Guys, let's move over to Florida State. The Wolf of Tallahassee, as I have termed Mike Norvell. We've talked about Knowles coin. It's soaring. We love the price that it's at right now. The bank account is looking great. Florida State went 10-3 last year, right? 5-3 in ACC play. They had a weird 3-game skid to Wake, NC State, and Clemson. But other than that, things were pretty rosy in Tallahassee last season. Mike Norvell is 18-16 in his 4 seasons there. And it seems like second-year offensive coordinator Alex Atkins started to figure some things out. The defense looked really good under Adam Fuller, who's in his 4th season. He came over from Memphis with Mike Norvell. So you got a lot of continuity on this staff. Plus, you have the most returning production in the country on both the offense and the defensive side. Jared Verse shocked everybody by coming back as the one of the potential number 1 edge rushers off the board in the NFL draft. He shocked everyone when he said, "Nope, I'm coming back to Florida State. I've got one more run in me." Him coming back on that defense is going to be scary. And then you look at some of these notable players on offense for Florida State. You got Jordan Travis, who is certainly a Heisman contender, threw for 3,200 yards last year, 24 touchdowns, but he also does it with his feet, over 400 yards rushing. A loaded running back room. You've got Trey Benson, who almost got to 1,000 yards a season ago, 9 touchdowns. And then a couple of wide receivers who are just incredibly lethal. Johnny Wilson, who's a great transfer from Arizona State. He shined last season. And oh, by the way, you've got Keon Coleman, who comes in from Michigan State out of nowhere, leaving the Spartans after spring ball. He's down to Tallahassee. I mentioned Jared Verse on the defense, 9 sacks a season ago. The linebackers in Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune are both really good. They combined, guys, 149 tackles last year, 17 of them tackles for loss. And then they get Fentrell Cypress, the second from Virginia, one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the ACC. He's playing for the worst team. He says, "Hey guys, it's been real here playing for the Hoos, but I'm going to go try for an ACC championship," and goes to Tallahassee. Led the country with nearly 2 passes defended per game last season, which is just unreal. If you're watching on the YouTube side, you see a couple of impact transfers as well. Braden Fiskey. And then you've got Hakeem Williams, a 5-star wide receiver. Lucas Simmons comes in, a 4-star offensive tackle. Guys, things are really good for Florida State, is what I'm trying to say right now. When you look across the board, and we'll get into their schedule in just a second, but when you look across the board, we know the talent's there. Let me ask you this. What is preventing all 3 of us from picking them as the ACC champions?
I think, is it still just a hangover from the start of the Mike Norvell era where, for me, that might be that, because even throughout their great run last year, I know they had the stretch in the middle of the season where they lost 3 straight, but even through all of that, even when they beat LSU, even when they, finished the season with 6 straight wins, including the bowl, there's just a small part of you that's like, yeah, but this could just be a one-off year. But when you dive into the stats, guys, Gary, if you want to pull up those numbers from last year one more time, nothing about that is fluky, right? It's not like they were, they had a crazy turnover margin and they just really capitalized off of turnovers that's not going to repeat itself. Yeah, they were really high in the nation in sacks, but it's because they have elite edge rushers that are coming back this year. Number one returning production in the country. It's not often that you have this easy of a case to say, yeah, there's going to be an encore performance. But I mean, obviously, you know, we don't want to give it the kiss of death with, you know, locking anything up as a guarantee, but this is in college football. This is about as guaranteed as you can get, right? All the returning production coming back. When you're looking for the recipe of an elite team, it's elite quarterback play plus elite pass rushing and just overall defensive competency, right? And all three of those boxes are checked by this Florida State team. They plugged some holes with some awesome players from the transfer portal. Keon Coleman. I love the defensive line additions from the portal as well with Braden Fisk. It's exciting. Like, it's really hard to not just go to the moon with this Florida State team. And when you look at the schedule, there's some tough stretches. The LSU game to start off the year is going to be a fantastic game once again. They play Clemson week 4. After week 4, the schedule really softens out a little bit. They do have Duke in there at home, rivalry game with Miami at home, and the big rivalry game at Florida to end the year. But with a front-loaded schedule, if they can just get one of those 2 early games, right? If they can just split LSU and Clemson, you have to feel really, really good about making them run and maybe having something really special by November.
Yeah, well, and Mitch, you asked what's holding any of us back from picking them to go. Nothing's holding me back. I picked them to go 12-0. What am I supposed to not like about this team? You've got a quarterback who really just doesn't turn the ball over, who's a threat both to run and pass, who put up big numbers. I mean, maybe you'd like to see from the, like, you know, elite quarterback, you might want to see the touchdowns come up overall. You want to see him score a little bit more, but you look around, he's got a great running game. You pick up Keon Coleman in the portal to go with Johnny Wilson. That's kind of disgusting. That might be that might be one of the better wide receiver tandems in the country.
I think that's my favorite wide receiver room in the whole country, not just in the ACC, but maybe in the entire country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of for sure studs. It's certainly up in the mix for some of the better receiver rooms. I'm trying to think, probably Ohio State and maybe Washington better, but they're strong case for third, if that. And I mean, what am I supposed to not like? You got Jared Verse on the defensive line. You got a lot of help on that defense. Like you're saying, Trey, nothing about that's fluky. If anything, you look at some of like the turnover, you know, and the penalties and stuff like that, you could see a lot of that come up, and then you're really cooking. And additionally, if you look at the schedule, they get a whole lot of stuff at home, right? Yeah. If you're looking at this, you've got LSU technically in the state of Florida. Yes, they have to go to Clemson, but you get Duke at home, Miami at home. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what am I not supposed to like about this Florida State team? I can't find anything that I don't like about them. So when I'm looking up and down this schedule, I say, yeah, I think Florida State has to be my pick to go 12-0 and win the ACC. So that's where I am on them. I know you've been pretty high on them, Mitch, with the Knowles coin, but I'm buying up as much as I can right now.
I have been, you know, and the LSU game, look, it was kind of it was a weird bounce of the ball last year, right? A blocked extra point that maybe keeps LSU from winning that game. I wrote in the preview, I feel like that just kind of like by the law of averages swings back to LSU this year. And of course we'll preview the Tigers when we get to the SEC. But they're going to be a whole lot of fun too. That's going to be a must-see game in the opening week of college football. Clemson, you know, I'm not in the habit of picking teams to go 12-0. I think that game on the road against Clemson is just kind of tough to predict Florida State to win, especially early in the season, but certainly very possible. I will say, like, if it is Clemson and Florida State that get to Charlotte, I am certainly having to think long and hard about Clemson beating them twice, right? Like, this is an incredibly talented team, potentially a more explosive offense. They certainly have better wide receivers, and even, you know, maybe not a better running back in Trey Benson, but I think he's going to open a whole lot of eyes this season. I think Florida State has a very real potential to be your ACC champion and, you know, to be in the college football playoff discussion, which, again, doing wonders for the Knowles coin.
And if you had told us that at the beginning of last season, even the most staunch Knowles coin investors would have just said you're crazy, right? Like going into that LSU game last year, even as LSU's lining up to kick that extra point that ultimately got blocked and it ended up with Florida State spurring that magical run they had last year. This is just what an amazing turnaround by Mike Norvell. What an awesome testament it is to his ability to just stay the course when all the pressure is on him. Think about the recruiting losses that he had, that they're calling for his head. He turns around with a 10-win season and has him right on the cusp of returning to glory. Can't say enough great things about the job he's doing.
Guys, I'm going to put in a call. I'm going to amend my earlier take. Florida State will be the ACC champ this year. They're going to go 10-2.
Yeah.
I'm going to give the win to LSU in the opener, I think, right now, and I'm going to say Clemson wins that game at home, close, but I think it's going to be a good game. But the more I talked myself into Clemson writing that preview, but you know what? I've been on the Florida State bandwagon now for really since Norvell got there. I thought it was a good hire, and I'm going to say that we see some real dividends this year. So run it back. I'm going to say that Florida State is your ACC champ.
There we go.
A team that I think may experience a really painful 2023 is Pittsburgh. Their movie comp that I came up with is the Fellowship of the Ring. And what I mean by this is I think it's a great developmental story, right? Pat Narduzzi is doing some awesome things there, but as far as action, not a lot happens in that movie. And unfortunately, I think for Pitt, this is going to be one of those years that you wish you could fast forward through. I think this ends up being a rebuilding season for Pitt, who lost a whole lot of production, not only on the offensive side, but their front four as well. I mean, losing Kalijah Cansey, who is a game changer in the front there. I'll tell you right now, Pitt goes 5-7 in my projection.
Wow.
Well, I know.
Wow.
It's not good. I know it's not good. Let me make the case for you. Pat Narduzzi, 62-41 in his tenure at Pitt. He has done nothing but meet expectations at the very least, right? I mean, he's really been very reliable, 8-4, kind of the floor. The issue is this year, the offense hinges around one man, a man who I have tried to buy stock in, who I have wanted to believe in, and then he ends up on the old injury report, and that's Phil Dracovic, the Boston College transfer. I had such high hopes for him on Chestnut Hill, and they just never worked. I'll kind of sing a sad song about Boston College coming up, but he's got a big arm and decent potential, but he just cannot stay healthy. That and the fact that I don't see Zay Flowers on this roster really make me question where the points are going to come from Pitt. The running back is totally by committee this year. They've got Rodney Hammond Jr., Sibo Flimster, and then Derek Davis, who's an LSU transfer. He was actually a defensive back last year who they convinced to make the switch to running back. So it's not the deepest running back room. Conte Munfield is a potential star in the making out wide, but other than Munfield, there's not really anybody that scares me. So you're telling me there's an injury-prone quarterback who has never really been consistent. You don't have a running game with a guy who you can just rely on, and you've got kind of one guy to throw to. It makes me really nervous. Defensively, we've got David Green, who's the only returning starter on the front four from a season ago. The edge rushing, nobody stands out. It's going to be kind of by committee. There's 4 or 5 guys that they're planning on rotating through there. So I'm wondering where they're going to get the pass rush from. They've got good corners. You've got MJ Devonshire, who's the captain of the secondary, Marquise Williams, and then AJ Woods. They all return as starters. So I think the secondary should be pretty good, but it's kind of a theme as we go through the rest of these ACC teams. It's like, man, maybe you have one thing that you do really well on defense, but if you can't score the points, like, I don't know that Pitt is built to win games defensively, right? So I know I'm low on them, 5-7, and that's one step above my floor. I could see them going 4-8. You could make a case for that. I think their ceiling is 7-5 because their schedule isn't that hard, other than a run from September the 9th through November the 4th. So basically a month is really, really tough. And for all those reasons, I'm out on Pitt this year.
Love the Shark Tank. But listen, I'm going to make the case for Pitt to have not a magical season, not a, busting the seams of the college football playoff like Desmond Howard wanted to think they were going to do last year. But
that was tough.
Yeah, that was a rough scene for Desmond. But
yeah,
listen, we trust Pat Narduzzi to put a competent defense on the field, do we not? I think at this point he's earned our benefit of the doubt. I know they're losing a lot of talent. I know that they haven't necessarily brought in this particular class, hasn't necessarily been, a lot of guys that you're really excited about. They did have a nice freshman linebacker commit in Jordan Bass. I think that's a really fun piece to the puzzle there. Brought in a couple of talented guys from Florida. But I think, this could maybe for Pitt this year be the anti-North Carolina. I think they might be a half team. If Phil Dracovic goes down, they definitely will be a half team at best.
Yeah.
But when Phil Dracovic is healthy, he can win you games in the ACC. He won games at Boston College. I think they have better talent at Pitt than Phil had around him at Boston College, Zay Flowers notwithstanding. But if Phil Dracovic can stay healthy, I trust the defense. I trust Pat Narduzzi. I trust, the system that they have there. Yeah, they lost a lot of pass rush production, but they were number one in the country at getting to the quarterback last year. That's not a lot of that's talent, but a lot of that is the system too, because consistently you see Pitt at the very top of those lists year in and year out under Narduzzi. So I'm not ready to say that it's going to be doom and gloom. I look at the schedule. I think other than North Carolina, I think they're going to be favored all the way through September going into their bye week. I'm not high on West Virginia this year. I know that that's a possible loss in a rivalry game on the road. I don't think West Virginia is going to be very good this year. I don't think Cincinnati is going to be very good this year. The back half is really tricky with trips to Notre Dame, Florida State at home, Duke on the road to end the year. The back half is really tricky. It could definitely spiral out of control in the back half. So don't hear what I'm not saying. But the middle of this conference is so vulnerable that I think if you can do one thing really, really well, and I think Pitt does defense really, really well, there's a lot of opportunities for wins against teams that might just have an off day or that you can shut down on any given day. So I'm a little bit higher on him. I think I had him at 8-4. That's about par for the course for the Narduzzi era. But I think a steady 8-4 could be in the cards for them this year.
Yeah, Mitch, I'm a little bit more with you. I think I have them going 5-7 as well. I'm just going to be a Pitt hater. Sorry about it. I don't know what else to say. I look at the schedule really, and for me, it's not really about what Pitt's doing necessarily. It's more about what they won't be doing, and I think what they won't be doing is playing good offense. I'm sorry, I just don't believe in Phil Dracovic at all. I've watched the tape. I've seen it. He throws some interceptions. He without Zay Flowers, I don't really know what he is. And so when I look at the schedule, you kind of glanced over, Trey, just the at West Virginia being maybe a loss in a rivalry game. They almost lost that game in Pittsburgh last year. It took some real magic to not lose that game.
The vibes are so low in Morgantown, though.
They are bad.
No, you're absolutely right. They were bad last year too. So I'm just saying, in a rivalry game, you don't.
They had hope week one last year. They have Neil Brown, and they don't know why.
Daniels was going to save the program last year.
You're right. No, that's
now he's going to save Rice apparently.
Yeah, maybe he will. But no, you have that. You have North Carolina on the schedule, and then it's at Wake Forest, at Notre Dame. You have Florida State at home, at Duke. These are just some games on here I'm looking at. I'm saying, yeah, that's a bunch of losses. And then you got to talk about toss-ups. I think Louisville could be a toss-up. I think Syracuse might be all right. And Trey, when we did the episode about quarterbacks, in the ACC and talking about who might be the best, we put Phil Dracovic right in the middle of that whole just lump of guys who could be number 5. We ended up going, I think, Garrett Schrader there, but it could be a lot of different guys who's that 5th best quarterback. There's just kind of a lump of average, mediocre, quarterbacks. And I don't see the talent around him. I don't see the playmakers around him that'll help him overcome any of that. So I have him going 5-7 as well. A little bit of a step back for Pittsburgh. I think it'll be a little bit unfortunate. They're going to have to go to the portal. They're going to have to build a better roster, and they're going to have to do a little bit better getting some of those playmakers in to help them out, get back to where they were going to be.
I am really curious to see what Randy Bates does after losing so much production. Trey, you mentioned he's got one of the most aggressive and statistically last year the most productive defensive line and pass rush in the country. A lot of that talent just walked out the door. So now I think his scheme really does get put to the test. Yeah, I worry about attrition offensively for Pitt, and I think getting eaten alive after that bye week is certainly possible. Could I see them going 8-4? Of course, that's what I have their ceiling listed as, but just don't. Or I'm sorry, I have it as 7-5. I just don't know if they're going to be able to score points to beat a Louisville at home, a Wake Forest, a Notre Dame on the roads, stuff like that. We'll see. Happy to be proven wrong there.
The path is them having, of this middle tier of the ACC. It's all kind of a glob of teams that are going to be in that 5-7 to 7-5 to 8-4 range if they can make a run.
Yeah.
If they can have the best individual unit, that's the path for Pitt. So if the Pitt defense is the best individual unit out of all that middle tier, you're going to be looking at a more respectable season for Pitt.
Guys, let's move over to a heartthrob of this podcast, the Duke Blue Devils. We've got head coach Mike Elko in his second season. The defensive wizard was 31st in scoring defense last season, 23rd in sacks. Guys, Duke did a thing that they hadn't done in the last couple of seasons. They'd won 5 games combined in Dave Cutcliffe's last 2 seasons. And then they went and won 8 games. They went 8-5, 4-4 in the conference. They got off to a strong start. Obviously, drop a heartbreaker there to Kansas. A little bit of a blip on the radar, losing to Georgia Tech in overtime and to North Carolina by 3, and then eventually Pitt by 2. But all of these, the similarity between those 4 losses in the regular season, they were all very, very close losses, right? 1-score losses. Elko had his team believing, and Riley Leonard was a big reason why. Kevin Johns, the second-year offensive coordinator, had the Blue Devils up to 32nd in scoring offense at 32.8 points per game last season. Riley Leonard really burst onto the scene, which was a ton of fun to watch, not only through the air, but running as well. He actually led the team in rushing yards last season, which, cup half full. Riley Leonard is a really good dual threat quarterback. Cup half empty. Duke didn't have a reliable running back last year. So do they fix that this year? We'll see. Leonard is going to be the engine for this offense, but I think if Jalen Calhoun can get going, I think he'll earn some national headlines as well. Had nearly 900 yards receiving last year, a couple of touchdowns. And then Graham Barton is an offensive tackle who's mocked in the first round of the 2024 NFL draft by some. So, it's not an elite offense. It's not a top 20 offense, but it's going to get the job done. And it's going to put teams like Clemson, like Notre Dame, like Florida State on notice as we go throughout this season. We talked about it off the top. We've all got Duke very, very high in our personal rankings. Garrett, you've got them second in the conference, making it to the championship game. Trey and I both have them going 9-3, 6-2 in conference. There's a lot to like about this team. They have run stoppers up front. Dwayne Carter, Jamian Franklin, who both return as key run stoppers. They were 4th in the ACC there last year. Brandon Johnson and Al Blades Jr. from Miami are good anchors back at the cornerback room. Miles Jones transfers in from Texas A&M in his 18th season of eligibility to reunite with Elko. So when I look at this team's strength for me, I think the offensive line was really strong last year and gave Leonard a lot of time to throw, gave him time to run. I see a lot of that returning this year. Defensively, I wonder if they can keep up that pressure, keep up the blitzing and be as effective as they were last year. But then again, that's Elko's pedigree. Overall, I think that they have a chance to do something that they haven't done since 2014, and that's win at least 9 games in the regular season.
Yeah, I am really high on Duke this year. Riley Leonard is the straw that stirs the drink, as you said, Mitch. And look, they have got a lot of potential to just make that offense even better. this year. I think Jalen Calhoun is an awesome weapon. They've got a nice 1-2 punch with Jordan Moore. And you look at the games that they lost last year, you talk about the potential. They were all 4 of their losses were by less than 1 score. Like they were so tantalizingly close to something just amazingly special in Mike Elko's first year. They could definitely have the potential to reach that this year. I don't know what Riley Leonard's future NFL plans are. I don't know if he wants to stick around after this year, but they're building around him. They've got a great core of talent around him. And again, talking about guys that you just trust to run a defense, Mike Elko, and now as he's, molding Tyler Santucci into the future defensive coordinator, I think he'll be a pretty solid one, especially learning under Elko. That Elko system is going to stop guys. That Elko system is going to be, keeping them competitive. We thought that's what they were going to lead with last year. The offense actually ended up being ahead of schedule. But I think the defense, as they get into year 2, we saw a big jump in year 2 of Elko's system at A&M, Notre Dame when he was there, even dating back to Wake Forest. So that year 2, you see a big jump typically. So, yeah, I'm excited about what Duke can do this year. I think they've got a fun schedule. That shout out to the season ticket holders in Raleigh-Durham because, home games with Clemson and Notre Dame, that's awesome for those people. And, yeah, I think that this could be a season that they talk about for a really, really long time. I also just want to shout out my guy Dwayne Carter again. Can we just refer to him as Wheezy on this show and maybe get a drop for him anytime he does anything big this year?
I'd be an absolute fan of that one. Look, for me, I picked Duke to be in the championship game because I think that they're going to be really good. If you look at the stats that are just up here on the screen, nothing about these numbers necessarily jump off the page at you. Obviously, the turnover margin being second in turnover margin at plus 16 is a little bit ridiculous, but you have a defensive-minded head coach. Defensive systems take a little while to settle in. You have to get your guys, find guys that are the right fit. So you get a year of recruiting, a year of the portal in there, another year of production and figuring out what your role is and how you're supposed to play and terminology and everything else. All of these total defense numbers, 68th, a 105 in pass defense, 111th in third down defense. I think that's going to be a lot better. I think you're going to see some massively improved numbers in those categories. They don't have to be special on offense. Again, look at some of the losses that they have there. You look at, Pitt lost by 2, North Carolina lost by 3. I think they can turn some of those around. And if you turn just a couple of those around, you're looking at a 10-win season, which is what I have them picked to do. I don't think that they're necessarily special enough to win all of their games. I don't think that I'm as high on them, as I am on Florida State and looking at some of what they're going to do. But if you do look over at the schedule, I think that they beat Clemson. They're not going to beat Florida State. And I think I had them dropping to Notre Dame as well, just because I do think Notre Dame is going to be a pretty solid team this year. They're going to be pretty salty. So, but looking at that game's out of conference. You get the one loss in conference. You show up and play in that not the national championship, but the conference championship game. That's going to be a special season. You're going to get a lot of people noticing, and then maybe you turn that into a recruiting effort that can start getting some of those top end playmakers. On the offensive side of the ball, maybe you start scoring a little bit more points.
I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. This is not a Duke team of old when they were really scuffling. This is not the team you schedule for homecoming. I think they make a lot of teams really, really nervous. They're going to be explosive. I think they're going to be unveiling a lot of new surprises every single week.
My one cause for pause with Duke, I'll just throw this in. I mentioned this earlier with Florida State. You look for fluky stats that could spur a big run. Duke was second in the nation in turnover margin last year, plus 16. Those tend to regress to the mean. Those tend to, I don't know. I don't think Riley Leonard's always all of a sudden going to catch the turnover bug, but they did. They were very opportunistic on defense last year. They got a lot of takeaways, and that's just something to look out for because the Vegas over-under is 6.5.
Yeah.
Vegas has a much different read on this team than I think not just this show, but a lot of college football media is starting to get, realize that Duke was really good last year. They're starting to really hype up that week 1 game against Clemson, but Vegas hasn't gotten on board yet. Whatever that means, you can read the tea leaves there, whatever you want, but just something to monitor and something that could give you a little bit of a cause for pause for Duke.
Hey, Duke was my darling last year. They smashed their over. and I will believe in them again.
There you go.
That's fair. That's fair. Guys, let's get a new word for our new affiliate, our new friends over at Homefield. Guys, Homefield's a premium college apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They're committed to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They've got a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including your favorite teams. Fellas, we've got shirts coming in from all over the country. I'm really excited to wear some of these on the podcast. They are, without a doubt, some of the best, most comfortable shirts. And if you're someone like me who hadn't ever bought a home field shirt, if maybe you knew of the brand, maybe you didn't, now is the time to get on board. You can get 15% off your entire order by using our code 3TechPod. You can support the podcast and get yourself some of the best looking, some of the most comfortable shirts on the market, all while repping some of the best vintage designs. Maybe they're for your team. Maybe you're just a college football fan like us. You just love some cool designs. You want to wear some really cool shirts. I've got my eye on a Penn State shirt that's coming in. I have no affiliation with Penn State, but I love the program. I love the shirt. I'm really, really excited about that. Again, 15% off your entire order when you use our code 3TechPod. Head on over to their website, get you some apparel, and let them know that we sent you over there. Trey, Louisville, I'm going to hand this to you. You wrote their preview. Throughout the rest of this episode, we've got Louisville, who's certainly a contender, and then we'll get into NC State, Wake Forest, Syracuse, some of the others. We may start to group some of those teams together, but Louisville, I feel like, is certainly important to spotlight. A changing of the guard, a changing at quarterback, and yet that offense could still be a lot of fun.
Yeah, going with our movie theme that we started off the top, Louisville's movie for me was a little play on the Avengers universe, Boilerman Homecoming. Because if you haven't heard, Jeff Brom coming down from Purdue, he's bringing literally his entire coaching staff with him. Jeff Brom, of course, the former Louisville quarterback. His younger brother, Brian, was also a quarterback at Louisville. And guys, I am quietly really, really excited about this Louisville team this year. And I know that, Garrett, this is a scorned lover of yours. I'm not going to ask you to jump on this hype train with me.
I will not.
That's fair. What you went through last year, no one should have to go through. But
thank you.
I'm quietly very, very excited about this team that Jeff Brom's put together for year one. I don't think a lot of people are talking about them around college football. And a couple of reasons. They brought in 25 transfers this year. Number 12 transfer class per 247. If you remember last summer, we were talking about their hot start to recruiting. They didn't hold on to all of those guys from the high school ranks, but they did hold on to some of those really talented guys. I like the formula here for the Jeff Brom offense. You really like in a Jeff Brom offense, you think back to his great ones at Purdue, even back to Western Kentucky before that. You have an accurate quarterback that can distribute the ball. You got a running back that can do just enough. And then you have just a big difference maker at wide receiver. Guys, remember the name Jamari Thrash, because if you haven't heard of him, if you haven't watched him play, he played at Georgia State his first few years. He transfers in from Georgia State to Louisville. Last year, 61 receptions, over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. Turn on the highlight tape on YouTube. It's all deep balls. It's all contested catches. It's all just him making huge plays and making guys look silly in the Sun Belt. So I am a little bit higher on Jack Plummer than I think most of the college football world is. And look, his stats did not light the world on fire at Cal. He was a very serviceable quarterback for a team that did not have a lot of talent around him. And he had 9 interceptions, but overall didn't turn the ball over a lot, made a lot of good decisions, made a lot of good reads. He's going to be running a similar offense here at Louisville. And, on the defensive side of the ball, they had 3 starters drafted last year, but they bring back some really interesting playmakers. Jarvis Brownlee had 66 tackles and 12 passes defended last year. Ashton Gillette was a backup last year, but still totaled 7 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. And as kind of a rotational player, they've got a lot of plug-and-play guys on that defense as well. So, if you're looking for something to worry about, the depth and experience at linebacker is certainly concerning. But, guys, the schedule is what makes them really, really interesting to me, because they're over-under sitting there at 7.5. You look at that schedule, there's not a lot of really scary games on there, right? They open up against Georgia Tech. I know you guys are really high on the Yellow Jackets. We'll get to them here in just a second, but that game is not on campus. It is at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Their marquee, I guess if you want to call it that, other than Notre Dame, their marquee out-of-conference game is Indiana. Again, not on campus. It's at the Colts Stadium in Indianapolis. And outside of that, there's a lot of opportunity. I think that they could be 5-0 going into that. NC State game is going to be tricky, but I think that they could be 5-0 going
Friday
into
night
that
on the road.
October 7th clash against Notre Dame. And then a lot of people start paying attention. Maybe you get game day in town. Maybe you get a lot more attention on that game on October 7th and a real chance to make a statement there. But guys, yeah, I am quietly really excited about Louisville. I think I have them going 9-3 this year. A really solid debut under Jeff Brohm. And I'm really excited about the future, really. Like you guys talk about Knowles coin going to the moon. Get in on Cardinal coin right now because I think Jeff Brohm, the future is very, very bright in Louisville with him.
I will not be getting in on Cardinal coin. There's no.
I don't blame you, Dan. You have every right to just let this go in one ear and out the other. After
if you've been burned, that's what happens. But I actually have a slightly different reason. Obviously, looking at the schedule, yes, you're right. That's not necessarily an intense opening the schedule. I think that Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium is a little bit more dangerous than you're going to give them credit for. That's a team and a fan base that's fired up right now with a lot of reasons to be excited. There's a lot of buzz around the program, no pun intended. And, I think that's going to be a really exciting game for a lot of them. Notre Dame, I think, is going to be really good. NC State, that's at NC State. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily going to hop in on this. The big thing for me is
Clemson and North Carolina, though. I think
they do.
Huge.
They do. And that's a big deal for them. My biggest concern, and I think this is going to have to be something I stay consistent with, is when you have this many new players, you have this many brand new guys coming into a locker room, you don't have any idea how it's going to mesh together. We like to say we believe that the offense is going to be on fire. We don't know how these guys are going to get together and play on the field. We haven't seen that. They're going to have great practices. They're going to see the same guy day in and day out. And then they're going to get, in that first game, it's going to be Georgia Tech. They might get punched in the mouth. And all of a sudden, hey, it's your fault. No, it's my fault. No, it's this guy's fault. No, it's that one. No, if you guys would get the ball back for us. And all of a sudden, everyone's yelling and screaming at each other because they're not used to being in that adverse spot with each other. So I'm not saying that they're going to be a terrible team this year. I have them going 6-6. I'm not going to buy into the hype necessarily year one. There's a chance that this is going to be a great team long term. And that this hire is going to really pay off for them long term. I just don't know how fast it's going to come together since they're basically working with a massively overhauled roster. Yeah, there's some good players in there. I just don't know how fast it comes together. And I've said the same thing about Colorado. I've talked about TCU being similar, how they're going to have a whole lot of brand new people. And I'm going to stay the same with Louisville on this one. I think that this is going to be a little bit of a tough transition, especially to open up the season to get this team on the right page.
I will say, if they can survive weeks 5, 6, and 7, NC State, Notre Dame, Pitt, I've got them dropping 2 of the 3 games that I've projected them to lose. I have them losing to Duke out of the bye week. So that's a really tough kind of 5-week stretch there. But other than that, the back half of their schedule is so forgiving. The Virginia
soft
schools,
open and a soft close. That's what you like to see.
Yeah, the Virginia schools are not going to be a threat. I don't think Miami. I have them going 5-7. I think it's another disappointing year for Miami.
Hater.
Then, we'll get to Kentucky. Well, we'll get there. I think they're better than Kentucky, so I've got them closing that out. Trey, let's go to NC State. We can kind of start to do some quick hitters here. NC State, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech are the next 3 schools that we've got in order. Where do you have NC State? Kind of give me the cliff notes here of where you've projected them.
This is going to be a fascinating year for NC State because I think that you could see this go one of 2 different ways, and it's going to really depend on what Brennan Armstrong, the Wolfpack, get. Because if they get the Brennan Armstrong that, was mind melded with Robert and I at Virginia and ran this really high-powered offense and was putting up billions of points and just made everybody look silly in the ACC, then NC State could be what we thought they were last year because everything went off the rails. I gave them the title, Dave Doran's A Series of Unfortunate Events, because it really was a tale of two seasons last year, right? Devin Leary, it's 5-1 in games that he started. He goes hurt. They finished 3-4, 19 points per game after Devin Leary goes down last year. The defense didn't step down. The defense really stepped up to the challenge and kept them in and was really the reason that they won 3 games down the stretch last year. But if they can get the Brennan Armstrong from pre-2022, right? The Robert and I, the air raid style, the slinging it all over the yard, Brennan Armstrong, the really exciting version, then this is going to be a really solid team that we need to watch out for and maybe think is a dark horse contender for the conference title. But if they get a version of Brennan Armstrong that's closer to what he put up last year, which was not pretty, it's going to be a really long year for the Wolfpack. It's going to be a little bit more of a down season for the Wolfpack. So replacing a lot of production on defense, obviously having to replace, a quarterback in Devin Leary that was just loved by everybody at NC State, loved by the coaching staff. But it's going to be really interesting. I think they've got some really interesting pieces. They've got a running back in Jordan Houston who they need to get going. They really need to get the running game going just in general. It was really, really bad throughout the whole season last year. The defense lost a lot of production, but they have a lot of guys that, if you remember to our previews last year, have played a lot of football for the Wolfpack. They were running really deep with depth last year. They dealt with injuries a couple years ago, and that's meaning that they're going to have a lot of guys that have played a lot over the course of their careers here. But really, it's going to boil down to, can Brennan Armstrong recapture that magic, and can they get some semblance of a running game going on offense? I trust the defense. I feel like I've been saying that a lot this episode. I trust the defense. I trust the coaching staff on that side of the ball. But if the offense can get going, that's going to really depend on, how high their ceiling actually is.
Yeah, if the quarterback is going to be good, it is a pretty big caveat. The problem for Brennan Armstrong is all of his numbers are massive. He's got 9,000 yards in his career. That's massive. 58 touchdowns, also massive. But 35 interceptions is also a pretty massive number.
He's going to sling it around.
and they, unlike previous teams, do catch a lot of these really good teams on the schedule. Notre Dame, Clemson, I think Duke, right? Miami, I think, could be really good. So I think that they're going to catch too many good teams to where I don't know that you can believe in a quarterback who turns the ball over as much as I think he's going to this year.
I've got him at 8-4, 3 losses in conference play. I've got NC State losing to Notre Dame, Duke, Clemson, and North Carolina to end the regular season. They should have lost that game last year. They didn't. I think the ball bounces the other way. Guys, cue a little less conversation because we're going Ocean's 11 here with Syracuse. This is a high-risk, high-reward team. Cliff notes, we got the full Dino Babers experience last year when they started 6-0. And boy, it was a fun start to the regular season, right? I mean, they crushed Louisville. They broke Garrett's heart. They won a wild game against Purdue, which was one of the wildest games I've ever watched on TV. They squeak by Virginia. They beat NC State, down Devin Leary. And then the Great Awakening happens, and they lose a heartbreaker to Clemson. And it was like, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like, Garrett Schrader could only run for his life so many times before the L's just start rolling in. He
got injured last year too, did he not?
And he did. But because that offensive line was horrific.
Yes, absolutely.
So Syracuse, if you're going to compete this year, you gotta protect your quarterback. That's kind of my big linchpin for them. Now I've got the Orange going 7-5, and Garrett, if you pull up their schedule for this year, I think they can do enough. It's a very soft opening to the schedule. I think at the very worst, they're 3-1 to start the season. We'll talk about Purdue when we get to the Big Ten. I don't know that we know what Purdue is going to be. On paper, they look fun, but we'll see. Clemson should be a loss. North Carolina should be a loss. Florida State should be a loss. I get that.
Back to back. That's just brutal.
It is a brutal stretch.
And then limp into your bye week.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be taping the peel back to the orange, getting into the bye week. But
the ACC hates Syracuse. They did this to them last year too, with that Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, Florida State back to back.
Yeah. But the second half of the season at Virginia Tech, Boston College versus Pitt and Yankee Stadium, at Georgia Tech versus Wake Forest, like, pretty soft close, right? Pretty soft close. Garrett Schrader is a solid quarterback. He doesn't sling it all over the yard. Aronde Gadsden the second had a massive year at tight end last year. Maybe
He's
the
a
most
fun player.
unsung tight end in the country. He had almost 1,000 yards receiving. They've got a really good defense. I really like what Syracuse has. The question is just what does Rocky Long give them as the new defensive coordinator? He is known as the creator of the 3-3-5, former New Mexico defensive coordinator. He comes over. I don't know how Syracuse is going to perform. So I do have to admit I'm spitballing a little bit with this 7-5 projection, but I'm going to choose to believe that Dino Babers knows. I don't think the back half of that schedule is difficult enough to rack up more than 5 losses for me on Syracuse's schedule. Now their floor is 4-8. They could have a big old slide if Garrett Schrader goes down again. If they can't establish a running game, which last year they really struggled to, even with Sean Tucker, that offensive line stunk. Actually, one of the craziest notes that I found in all of this research, Schrader was running for his life. He was sacked 43 times last year. Let's see here. So left tackle, left guard, and right guard are all returning starters. They allowed a combined 4 sacks. That meant from the right tackle and the center position were attributed 39 sacks last year. They gave up 43 total. The center and the right tackle were accused of giving up 39.
Not very good.
No. They bring in Joe Moore from Richmond and John Ray Reed from Hutchinson Community College. Now, both performed well in their respective leagues, not the FBS, right? Not the ACC. So some question marks with Syracuse. I think you can get the Orange to 7 wins in a bowl game. Any thoughts from you guys quickly?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's Syracuse. They kind of were living by a prayer and a dream last year in the first half of the season. I think we all kind of saw that second half coming when you looked at the schedule and you saw the uptick in the, teams that they were playing against, just to be quite honest. But I think you're spot on. They're going to be a borderline bowl team. There's a lot of these teams in this tier that are going to be a borderline bowl team if they stay healthy and they do what they're best at, which for Syracuse is Garrett Schrader doing just enough on offense and making things happen. Then they'll make it to a bowl. If those things fall apart, they won't make it to a bowl. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and they're going to fall apart. It's 4-8 for me for Syracuse. Sorry, I see 4-8. I don't think it's a great year for them. I don't think Garrett Schrader's dynamic enough to do anything that's going to be really special. Don't see the playmakers around him that much. Obviously, the tight end, we just talked about that, pretty good. But losing can be contagious. We've seen it happen multiple times where there's a pretty good team that's loses a few games in a row, kind of gets off its groove, kind of forgets what winning feels like. And I think that win against Army is going to feel like a long way away when they're playing, Thursday night versus Virginia Tech on the road. That's going to be a tough one to kind of get up for after a bye week, kind of a sleepier bye week where you probably got to lick your wounds after 3 losses. I don't know. I think losing is going to be pretty contagious. I think they lose a bunch down the stretch. I know it's kind of a soft close, but I think they lose a bunch down the stretch, and it's not a great year for Syracuse.
Shout out their defense that has maybe the best nickname in the game. They call themselves the Mob. So I really like that. Marlo Wax, Caleb Okwechiku, menaces at the linebacker and edge rusher position, respectively. All right, guys, very quickly, I'm going to make my case for Georgia Tech making a bowl game. Ready, set, here we go. All right. Jeff Collins, they got rid of him. Hooray. That was a great move. Collins was terrible in Atlanta, didn't recruit the state, didn't establish the culture. The Rambling Wreck deserved better. They went 5-7 last year, and guess what? All of that thanks to Brent Key. He won in his first game as a head coach at Pitt, which was a monumental win. We were all stunned to see that. He then turns around and beats Duke in overtime. We watched that game together. That was a crazy win for the Yellow Jackets. Mixed results the rest of the way, but they also had an uptick in competition. That didn't matter when they played UNC. They won 21-17. So Georgia Tech, look, the stats are abysmal. Garrett, your graphic there in the middle, yikes. A lot of really bad, really high numbers, 122nd in the country
Lots
on
of
third
triple
down.
digits.
A lot of triple digits, kind of like the temperature around the Lone Star State right now. It's not good, but let me make my case. First of all, quarterback play I think is going to be decent this year. Zach Pyron, I think, wins the job there. It sounded like he had the edge coming out of the spring game over Haynes King, the Texas A&M transfer. They've got a couple of running backs I like: Dante Smith, Trey Cooley. Malik Rutherford is a wide receiver on breakout watch. Georgia Tech continues to evolve the offense into the 21st century, which is, about time. They have an interesting offensive coordinator this year. Buster Faulkner comes over from Georgia. Faulkner was a quality control coach essentially, but he worked a lot with the quarterbacks and did a really good job between the hedges. I'm curious to see what he can do bringing that to Atlanta. The defensive coordinator, Andrew Thacker, he's been there for a couple of seasons. Their defense has not been anything special. There's no doubt they need to improve on that. What worries me on the defense is getting pass rush, right? Keon White was drafted by the Patriots, was a great edge rusher last year for the Swarm. He's gone. Where do they get that production from this season? Offensively, they've got to find a way to score points, right? Their scoring offense was 125th in the country last year. You say, Mitch, that is all terrible. How on earth do you get them to a bowl game? Trey, you were specifically asking me that earlier before we hit record. Let me guide your attention over to the schedule. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll read it for you. Louisville to start. That's tough. But then you play South Carolina State. You're at Ole Miss, at Wake Forest, Bowling Green, at Miami. Bye. You go, Mitch, that sounds like a terrible way to start your season. And I agree. It's a tough start for the Yellow Jackets. But then you get Boston College, North Carolina, at Virginia, at Clemson, Syracuse, Georgia. I think if you rearrange the pieces, I think you can find wins. South Carolina State. I think you can beat Wake Forest, but your defense is going to have to be a miracle. You can beat Bowling Green. You can beat Miami. And we'll get to Miami's preview in just a second. You can beat them. Trey's holding up fingers for questionable wins.
We're counting them. We got 2 for sure.
Boston College is going to stink this year. That's a win. Lost to North Carolina. Virginia is going to stink this year. That's an easy win. You lose to Clemson unless maybe you pull something out of your hat. You almost beat them last year, or not last year. Two seasons ago. I'm sorry, 2 seasons ago. My bad.
41-10 last year.
And then Syracuse. If we're really, really questioning how Syracuse's offense is playing down the stretch, you got them at home. Now, you're not going to touch Georgia. Good old-fashioned hate. They're good old-fashioned hate, right? Yeah. So that's how you get to 6-6. Is it an ironclad case? No, of course not. Would I lay any sort of hard-earned American currency on that? No. Am I going to take them to get their over-under, which is 4.5? Sure. I think the Yellow Jackets can get that, so I'll say they get to 6-6 and get to a bowl game.
Guys, I wrote the Georgia Tech preview. I think Georgia Tech's going to surprise some people this year. I think it's going to be a little bit of a up on the projections from what we're seeing right now. None of the numbers last year were amazing, but after they fired Collins and went on to Brent Key, this team played really hard for him. They played really well for him. A lot of those blowouts that you're seeing beginning of the season had nothing to do with Brent Key and his coaching. And look, for what it's worth, Zach Pyron played really well as quarterback. He just didn't play all that much down the stretch. He played well enough as a quarterback when he played. And look, there's some really talented players coming in on this team. They've kind of quietly had a really good transfer class. There's a lot of guys on the defense that have transferred in that I think, you're mixing and matching some new faces, kind of hoping that you can, make something work. Again, you're going to have new faces, so who knows how they all fit together. But there's a lot of optimism, I think, within the program that things can go the way they want it to. Guys, Malik Rutherford is a certified baller. And I'm going to say, if you have a guy like that on your team, you're going to sneak probably 1 or 2 games that you shouldn't. Malik Rutherford is that guy. If you watch the spring game, there was some really fun one that he had one where he caught a screen, kind of reverse field, broke like 7 or 8 tackles on his way to a touchdown. Had another one where he, kind of ended up being more of a streaky kind of play and scores another one. So, look, Maurice Rutherford, he's really, really solid. DJ Moore, also a really good wide receiver there. I know they're thinking that Christian Leary could be big. He's a Bama transfer who I think that, he's really talented, didn't really fit with the Crimson Tide and what they were doing. Look, you can say what you want to. It's Georgia Tech. You can believe just based on history that they're not going to be very good. This is a different type of Georgia Tech team. And I think they're going to make some noise. I think that first game against Louisville in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, talked about it a little bit earlier. I think that'll be a really big one for them to kind of come out, make a statement in front of their home fans. That's their hometown. That's in front of those guys who are going to be out there. They're going to buy tickets up. And I think it's going to be a really fun one to kick off the season for them. I could be holding the bag at the end of this one and just saying, hey, look at this. Georgia Tech was bad again. I just don't think it's going to happen. I have them winning 7 games this year. I think they're going to be a lot of fun.
Who am I to rain on y'all's parade? I'll let y'all have that one. I'll just point at the last few seasons as my evidence why I disagree, but you guys have fun.
That's totally fair. We've got Wake Forest and Miami to get to next. Trey, Wake Forest, oh boy, this could be a really frustrating season for the Baptists. You and I have them going 6-6. Garrett has them going 7-5. Dave Clawson has been a model of consistency for the most part, but Sam Hartman is no longer their quarterback. Mitch Griffiths takes over, who by all accounts is ready to take over that position. For me, I'm really nervous about that secondary. The defense was bad last year, and there is a chance it could get even worse. They were really bad at containing the big play last season. They were 119th in the country in plays over 20 yards and 111th in the country at preventing plays over 30 yards. They also surrendered 28 points per game. My absolute ceiling for them is 8-4. My prediction is 6-6. I think they dropped 4 of their last 5. That's a tough close to the schedule.
I think Clawson's too good to not make a bowl game. And I had to squint to get them there.
Yeah.
When I was, going through my projections, I think it's a tough schedule. Anytime you have, Florida State at Duke back-to-back, NC State we talked about could be plucky, and then at Notre Dame to close the season, that's really, really tough. Back-to-back, add in a trip to Clemson earlier in the year. Soft open. I think that's what you got to hope for. You got to really make hay early and really hope that Griffiths is adjusted quickly. But how much of this team, what would the record have been last year, without Sam Hartman? I know we talked about on a recent episode, he's been a gunslinger. He has turned the ball over. But any time that you have to rely on your offense to just go berserk to win the game because your defense can't help but give up 40 or 50 points, you're going to lose a lot of games. And when you don't have elite quarterback play, it's going to be really, really difficult for you to have a successful season. So long term, I think Dave Clawson is a fantastic coach. He does more with less, more than, most coaches do with less talent. And he's consistently built a winner at Wake Forest, which is really, really difficult to do. But this would be his best coaching job if they were to, have an encore season this year. The defensive talent is just really lacking in my mind. I think the offense is going to take a slight step back. He will have a lot of targets to throw to, and I think it will still be an exciting offense that puts up a lot of points, but any competent offense that they're playing against, you have to be ready for them to score bunches of points. And so if you're having to keep up with that week in and week out, it's just a lot to ask for your offense.
Another team that might need to score bunches of points, and I don't know if they can, is Miami. Listen, guys, I'm down on Miami again. My movie comp for them was the Titanic. A lot of expectations. Look, coming into last year,
they were submarine, right? Really rich, but just straight to the bottom. Straight
to the bottom. It clearly went sideways at the beginning of the season. The loss to A&M, they get embarrassed by Middle Tennessee State at home. The losses, not even competitive against Clemson or Pitt. They fire Josh Gaddis, their offensive coordinator, after 1 year. They bring in Shannon Dawson, who ran the air raid with Dana Holgerson for years at Houston. So they're going from a kind of a pro-style run-heavy offense to the air raid. I don't know about you, but
That
Tyler Van Dyke.
transition always works,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like that is not an easy transition to make, and I don't know that Tyler Van Dyke is the guy to do it. What really concerns me is if you're going to run the air raid, you better have some boys out wide that can make plays for you. I don't know that Miami has that. I mean, you look at really any preview, and their question mark for the Canes is that wide receiver position. Do they have the speed? Do they have the size? Xavier Restrepo is healthy this year. He should be fun. But when you're telling me you're relying on Tyler Harrell to be your number 3, the guy has been at let's see here. He's third stop in 3 years. He has just 22 catches in 5 seasons playing college ball. Like, that is not an indicator of success for me. They should have a really good pass rush. They had a good pass rush last year. They've got some great defenders on the edge. Akeem Masador, Jafari Harvey, Nylik Kelly, and then 4-star freshman Ruben Bain Jr. are expected to be the edge rushers there. Corey Flagg Jr. is their leading tackler. He's the captain linebacker. They've got a couple of transfers coming in to play corner, and then Cameron Kitchens had 6 interceptions at safety last year. So the defense is fine, but when you talk about it, their offense was anemic last year, and that secondary couldn't tackle, which is really concerning. So, I know they bring in Shannon Dawson. Lance Guidry comes over from Marshall. Marshall finished 8th in the country per the S&P Plus last year. So staff upgrades across the board. But I go to look at Miami's schedule, and I think they lose to Texas A&M. Guys, I think they find a way to lose a weird one. So for me, I told you, Georgia Tech. I just that's my game on their schedule that they lose. That goes, what? How on earth? They play North Carolina. They play Clemson. They've got NC State and Florida State both on the road. And then they play Louisville at the end of the season. I just feel like Cristobal is going to be in so much hot water. I feel like if it goes sideways, if you start to push that snowball down the hill, I don't know how he stops it.
Yeah, there's some tough games on the schedule. I'm not 100% sure that the air raid won't work here, and I'll tell you why. Look, last season we went into it thinking that Tyler Van Dyke was going to be a Heisman candidate, that he was amazing, he's an all-world guy, he's got loads of arm talent, and that wasn't unfounded, right? There were reasons we thought this. There's plenty of tape from the previous year, and he fell apart last year. Josh Gaddis just didn't work for him. I think giving him the air raid, something that's a little bit simpler, a little easier to chew on, quick reads, just deliver a quick pass, kind of get on a roll, get hot. That could work for him. That could really work for him if they can just give him something to think about. He's got the arm talent to get, passes where they need to be. And if you just see a little bit of an uptick on offense, I mean, you look at some of their stats from last year offensively, where they finished, not impressive numbers. If those numbers tick up a little bit, I think you could see them win a few of these games. Now, I don't think that they beat A&M, and I don't think that they'll probably beat Georgia Tech, but there's some winnable games there. Virginia, NC State, Louisville, Boston College. There's some winnable games back there if they can just get the quarterbacks to play a little better, get a little bit more production out of Tyler Van Dyke, who we know he can do it. I think pretty clearly last year the issue was not anything about his talent. It was just about what was going on inside his head. So if they can figure out the 4 inches between his ears, then they'll be able to figure out what's going on there for that offense. They certainly have the ability. They have some talented playmakers. There's a lot of speculation right now. I think they can put it together with a little bit of a simpler offensive scheme.
It's going to be interesting. I think they're way more talented than their record says that they are, right? And their offense is way better on paper than it was on the field last year. So I joked about the transition from pro style to air raid, but it doesn't really hurt to change it up, right? You got to try something different at that point. Don't know that you really want to blame the guy that just won the award for best assistant coach in the whole country, but
right.
Not blaming the coordinator, just the fit.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. I'm not talking to you, Garrett. I'm talking about just Miami in general.
Sure.
Right?
Gaddis took a bullet for Cristobal.
Yeah, that's a shot at Cristobal, 100%.
Sure.
Like, I don't know how you can take yourself seriously and look at yourself, but you had to do something, I guess. But do we really think that they were 40 or 30 points worse than Pitt last year, or 14 points worse than Middle Tennessee? It was just a comedy of errors for Miami last year. They were way more talented than that. I think it'll be a bounce back year. They're not going to compete for the conference championship like we thought they might last year, but it's going to be better. But better days are coming, I think, for Miami fans.
If they don't, things are going to get miserable in a hurry. They're already losing a lot of recruiting battles, so fans are mad at them for that. If the play doesn't back it up this year, boy, it's gonna get rude down there in Coral Gables. The Virginia schools. Virginia Tech to me is far and away the better school here, and it's not really fair to Virginia. Um, Obviously the way that things played out last year for Brent Pride did not go well. You look at the schedule there on the video side. Yeah, they lost 7 in a row, and some of them were very close losses. In fact, most of them were close losses, but they were not competitive against West Virginia. They weren't competitive against North Carolina. They bring in Kyron Drones, Baylor transfer, who was supposed to be kind of the next great quarterback for Baylor, and Dave Aranda went elsewhere. He went with Blake Shapen. He committed to him. And Drone said, all right, I'm going to go somewhere where I can play. I really like Drone's ability to maybe beat out Grant Wells. Grant Wells turned the ball over like it was going out of style last season, had a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And if you're looking on your screen, the best offensive metric that they had ranked 103rd in the country. So it didn't work on the offensive side of the ball. The defense was actually pretty solid, but they lose Dax Hollifield finally. He'd been there for 18 seasons. He's gone as the captain of that linebacking core. They do have a couple of edge rushers in CJ McCray and Cole Nelson, but I'm really wondering how the linebackers play this year. I think the secondary can be fine. I think the defensive line can be fine. But as we have seen with Texas A&M, our team, when you don't have good linebacker play, that is a handicap to your defense. There's a lot of questions here with Virginia Tech. I think they can make it to a bowl game. I'm not going to die on that hill. But I do think the offense has a lot of playmakers. They get Allie Jennings, who transfers in from Old Dominion. He beat Virginia Tech as a Monarch last season, which was an incredible upset. They get a transfer wide receiver in from Norfolk State in Daquan Felton. Their running backs, Bashul Tootin from NC A&T. He rushed for 1,300 yards last season. So, listen, not like proven guys at the FBS level necessarily, although Allie Jennings is a monster. But they've got playmakers. The offensive line gets better. I think you can get Virginia Tech to a bowl game. Virginia, on the other hand, I've got them going 1-11. They just don't have the talent. They don't have the recruits in place. I think this is a long process for Tony Elliott. I don't really have much to add on the Cavs this year. I think it's just going to be kind of a painful campaign for them. We'll talk about Boston College in just a second, but any other comments on the Virginia schools?
I'm with you on Virginia Tech to an extent. I think, it's going to be another painful year of football in the state of Virginia overall, I think. And the back half of Virginia Tech's schedule gives you some hope that if they can figure some stuff out, if they can get traction at the right time, they've got a really, really soft close after the Florida State game, essentially. So October and November, Wake Forest and at Louisville are probably your toughest games, and NC State is on there too, but certainly some winnable games. You got a Thursday night home game against Syracuse. I think you can squint and maybe get them to a bowl game if they figure some things out, but offense just has such a long way to go. Like I think that's more than a 1-year turnaround project there for Virginia Tech. And, for Virginia, we have to, address the elephant in the room that just so many things went wrong for them last year. Injuries, trying to switch the scheme, obviously the tragic situation that unfolded on their campus at the end of the year last year. Yep. None of that's Tony Elliott's fault, but I think – I don't know that this is necessarily a make or break year for him yet, but he's got to show something, right? He's got to show something to show that they're moving in the right direction. They have some form of hope for the future.
I do want to say, just to say their names, Lavelle Davis Jr., Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry were the 3 players that were murdered last year. Tony Elliott was quoted saying, "We're not moving on, we're moving forward." So right. Certainly our thoughts and prayers are continue to be with the Who's family. Wish the best for him. I think it's going to be a long year on the football field.
Yeah. And unfortunately with the circumstances, you need something to start going well if you're Virginia. And looking at, the beginning of their schedule. Tennessee, James Madison was super competitive last year,
That's a loss.
I think that's a loss too. And then
Maryland looks
at
good.
Maryland, that's going to be really tough. I think Maryland's going to be a really good team in the Big Ten this year. And then you just kind of look down the schedule. You're starting to look for wins. NC State, probably not. At Boston College, yeah, maybe a toss-up. But I think you start really having to look hard and squint before you're going to find some wins for Virginia. And unfortunately, yeah, losing can be contagious. So you hope that something can start to roll and they can maybe snag one of those games. But you can put me in the doubters category. I think it's going to be a tough year for the Cavaliers.
Lastly, let's cover Boston College. It's Jeff Hafley's fourth season. First three have been really disappointing. I was on record last year saying that Boston College was, an 8-4 program. I really thought that they could get there. They were supposed to be a top 25 contender, and they were anything but. They went 3-9, 2-6 in the ACC. Jurkovec is now obviously to Pitt. Their offensive line stunk last season. Emmett Moorhead is the now projected starter at quarterback. He's got Thomas Castellanos. And there's a deep drive into left field to compete with at the quarterback spot. I think Moorhead is going to win from all the reports that I've read. They had no running game last year. Pat Garwo, after having a breakout 2021 campaign, only had 400 yards after he got over 1,000 2 seasons ago. Kai Robichaux is a big threat, a big play threat who's transferring in from Western Kentucky, so he should help. Out wide, Ryan O'Keefe is going to be the Zay Flowers replacement. He was Mr. Reliable for UCF. He transfers up to Chestnut Hill to finish.
Really fun player. He's really, really fun.
Yeah, got some gadget ability to him as well. The defense actually should be really, really fun. A couple of edge rushers. You got all ACC edge rusher Donovan Izariku, 14.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. You've got George Rooks, who transfers in from Michigan. He should be a run stopper, and they need him to be at the defensive tackle spot because that run defense was abysmal last year. For sure, the strength of this team is going to be pass rush. My weakness, though, for the 5 starters from a top 44 unit last year in the secondary are gone. And then I'm really wondering if you can't get the running game going. Ryan O'Keefe's great, but one man an offense does not typically make. So for me, it's another tough season for Boston College. I've got them going 4-8, just 1-7 in conference play. Unfortunately, I when I was kind of looking on different teams' schedules for like, okay, here's the game that they need to win. Unfortunately for the Screaming Eagles, it was Boston College that answered the bell. I think they're going to catch a lot of opponents at bad times, to be quite honest. So unfortunately, I'm low on Boston College this year.
Yeah, not a lot else to add for me. I do really like O'Keefe as a playmaker. I think, he could be a really solid, I'm not going to say he will be Zay Flowers, but he's going to replace him well. He's going to replace that production pretty well in the offense. And, you look at last year, obviously they dealt with injuries to Jurkovec, and that was really central to their plans. But yeah, it's going to be tough sledding. If they can get the defense to step up a bit, if they can get the defense to be a truly top half of the league unit, then maybe they have a higher ceiling, right? Maybe they can sneak into a bowl game. Maybe they can take advantage of some weaker teams on the bottom half of the ACC. But yeah, they're a couple years away, I think, and of quite a few players away from really truly contending for anything special.
I think you're right about contending for something special. It could still be a decent year for them. I'm a little bit higher on them than y'all. I've got them going 6-6.
It could make
I think Northern Illinois, Holy Cross, and Army are all probably, I'd lock them in as wins. UConn, I think they should win that game. I know they probably should have won it last year, but we'll ignore that for now. And then, you throw in a couple of Virginia schools, maybe another toss-up somewhere in there. It's not impossible to get these guys to 6 wins. I certainly think you can get them to 6 faster than a lot of people can. So, it might be optimistic, but I'm a little bit higher on the Eagles here.
They do have the schedule to sneak in. They certainly do.
They absolutely do. Listen, we know we don't go perfect on these projections. Can't wait to get to the regular season to see how all this plays out. Fellas, that was a marathon. 14 teams are down. We've obviously got the rest of the Power 5, a group of 5 episode coming up as well. If you did enjoy this ACC preview, please leave a like on YouTube, leave a comment, follow us over on our social media accounts at 3TechPod, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. Find us on YouTube as well. For Trey Reeves, for Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about